Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to talk once again about the heat wave this week and also the potential for storms on Wednesday and Thursday, where they might occur, when they might occur, and also why they might occur. But before we look at that, we're going to do a quick overview of the current setup. And as we talked about last video, we have this high pressure which is responsible for this heat because it's allowed the very hot air from the Mediterranean and North Africa to slowly move through Spain, through France and into parts of the southern UK. And actually it's getting very, very warm for the Paris Olympics, not quite as warm for us. But if we look at the temperature chart for 1.5 kilometers above the ground, that's what this bit here means. This is a fairly good indicator of the air mass, and you can see where we have those yellows, oranges and reds, that's where we've got a fairly warm and hot air mass, and you can really see how that's moved up from the south over the last few days. And it's not really going to move that much further north because it's blocked by the very high pressure which kind of allowed this to occur in the first place. So because the winds are not strongly out of the south, it's kind of going to be limited in its northward extent to kind of parts of northern England and Ireland, as you can see there. But it will linger for a few more days through Wednesday, through Thursday, and even into Friday and the weekend, where we finally get milder air pushing through. And so as a result, temperatures look to be quite high throughout the next few days. Today, temperatures are already reaching into the low 30s. I think 31 has been recorded so far, and 32 degrees looks like the most likely maximum. But if we move through Wednesday afternoon, you can see on the UKV model, temperatures are likely to reach through the 30s across parts of the Midlands. Oh, that's not very helpful pen. So you can see temperatures are likely to reach through the 30s through the Midlands and southern England. And then we'll see a similar thing on Thursday, though possibly where there are storms, the temperatures will be slightly lower. But basically, temperatures peaking in the low 30s today and tomorrow, and then in the high teens and possibly just about 30 degrees on Thursday and Friday before things turn milder on Saturday, as you can see there. It's worth noting though that for kind of especially Western Scotland and parts of Northwest England, it will be feeling relatively average, if anything below average. So the warmth will really be for Ireland, Northern Ireland and England, and then the heat will really only be for England and parts of eastern Wales as well. But that's quite positive. It's likely to meet the heat wave threshold for many areas and last a fairly decent time. So kind of payback, if you like, for the less summery weather we've had so far. Now we will look more in detail at the storms, and things are looking quite complex and quite uncertain. We'll take a look at the reason why. So typically for storms in the UK, we're looking for warm and unstable air, and then also kind of a lift, which is essentially where the air is rising and that allows the storm clouds to develop and then produce lightning once they've intensified. And to get kind of the warm and stable air, we'll show this chart here. This is the dew point. This is the temperature at which the air will condense. And generally we're looking for these blue colours or dark green colours, but blue is best. And of course purple as well, where it gets darker, that's better. Or higher, sorry, that's better. But if we watch this chart, you can see, so this is for today. It's been very humid across many areas where we've got those blue colours, but still not really enough for thunderstorms. However, if we notice to our south, we have a lot of dark purple and dark blue. That's indicating very unstable air, and that's going to kind of edge slowly north during Wednesday, and then kind of the residual, so you can see there, it gets in on Wednesday afternoon, kind of like that, and then the residual kind of warmth and unstable air is also going to move over us on Thursday. So we have kind of the possibility of storms on both those days. Now in terms of lift, things are a lot more complicated. I'll show you the upper level pattern first so you can kind of get an idea of what's going on. So this is the wind at around 6 kilometers through the atmosphere, so kind of halfway. And you can see we don't have any obvious features. We kind of just have a fairly uniform flow from the southwest. This is during Wednesday evening. There are no kind of big lows like we've got here, for example. There are no large or significant short waves. There is actually one here, which I'll talk about in a moment. But you can see for Wednesday night, which is when we first had that unstable air in place, we're not seeing anything very notable, which means kind of two things. We're either going to have to rely on surface features like convergence zones, or we're going to have to rely on much smaller features at lower levels. And the problem with smaller features is they're harder to predict where they will form, even if they will form, also where they will move. So that's why the uncertainty is quite high. But do notice how on Thursday morning, and also some models have it on Thursday afternoon, we have this little bump in the flow here with a kind of enhanced wind field. And that is going to be a shortwave trough, which might help to enhance storms a little more widely during Thursday afternoon. Though if it clears too quickly, as you can see here, and then we get stuck under the mid-level ridging, that might also help to suppress storms. So kind of early afternoon on Thursday and then late evening on Wednesday are the main chances. But I was just talking about smaller potential features. We'll look at that now. This is 850 hectopascal pressure level, so back to the 1.5 kilometers above the ground. And I'm showing you something called vorticity, which is basically a fancy word for saying spin in the air. So anywhere we've kind of got the air moving around in a circular motion, that's where we've got vorticity. And then also we have the wind overlaid on that as well. And this chart is valid for Wednesday evening. So this is one potential area where when storms could form. And notice we have a small disturbance here sitting in the channel on Wednesday evening. This is for 6 o'clock. And like I just talked about, we don't have a big disturbance, but this is a smaller one. Sorry, wrong thing. This is a smaller one. So this is something to watch, because if we get storms associated with this, we get the lift, because the air is so unstable, and I'll show you that right now actually. So this is, so if I take a sounding, which is a 3D view of the atmosphere from the channel on Wednesday evening, you can notice we have a very large area between this white dashed line and the red line. And I won't fully explain it now because I've done it in a few videos before, but essentially the larger the area, the more energy any updrafts will have when they kind of move upwards. But we also need to note that at the surface, the lines, the temperature and dew point line, are actually moving upwards to the right, which means we have stable air. So there's a stable layer at the surface, which means that these storms will be elevated if they do form. But if they do form, like I said, they have a lot of energy, so they could potentially be quite intense. And also notice how we have a fair amount of wind shear in the profile as well. That's 35 knots of effective shear, which could organise storms potentially. So if they do form and move into the UK, they could be fairly intense, possibly the most intense we've had this year, but that's quite a big if. So we do have this small disturbance to look out for. The issue is there is quite a bit of uncertainty between the models. For example, if I show the icon, you can see it's number one, a lot less pronounced, but also, don't know what's going on with this chart here. Maybe they've got some technical difficulties, but you can see this is our disturbance here on the icon, and it's a lot. Number one, it's further east, so less close to us, less chance of bringing those storms into the UK, because also once they do form, they'll be moving generally to the east or slightly to the northeast. So to get storms covering a large area of southeastern England, we'd ideally be wanting them to form kind of here and then moving in that direction rather than down here, because it will just kind of scrape the far southeast. I'll see if I can get this. Here we go. This hopefully works a little bit better. And then, so you can see the disturbance on the icon model. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong time actually. I'm very sorry about that. Maybe I was showing the wrong time on the European model too. Let me just go back. Apologies, everyone. Oh no, I don't think I was. But so the European model, there's a disturbance for 6 o'clock on Wednesday. And then if we go to the icon for the same time, then you can also see we have a low here. And this is fairly defined. So definitely I'll be looking out for storms forming along central, kind of southern England and the Channel, and then moving in this direction on Wednesday evening. If we just take a quick look at the GFS, and there's our disturbance. There's our disturbance as well. So all three of the models that are available here are showing this. And actually, if we compare to the high resolution models, we do see a fairly similar picture on the latest runs, which is storms developing here. You can see this is Wednesday evening. They develop, move northeast, and because we've got a lot of instability and a lot of shear, or relatively high amounts of shear, we get some very high purple colours showing up in this region. So potentially for the south coast and southeast England, I'd be looking out quite strongly from kind of 7 o'clock through the night on Thursday. through the night from Wednesday into Thursday for some fairly big storms associated with this disturbance. And I've drawn out a kind of preliminary forecast. This is very likely to change. You can see in this yellow zone that's probably the highest risk at the moment, but because the feature is so small, there is a lot of uncertainty. And so if I compare to past model runs, for example the 3 o'clock run, you can see this time storms work further to the north. So that's why kind of anywhere in the southeast corner should be keeping an eye on the forecast for these storms. And also the small possibility of storms forming during the afternoon on Wednesday as well. You can see here we've got a couple showers showing on this model, but there is a fair amount of dry air. There's a little bit of a cap, so I'm not completely sold on this idea yet. Now you may be wondering, if you see this run, there are a lot of storms to the north as well. Now this is fairly uncertain, because if we go back to this chart, you can see there's no hugely obvious kind of low, but what you can notice is a slight shift in the wind there, the kind of enhancing of the vorticity and a slight bend in this isobar. So potentially there is the hint of another disturbance which might move into kind of the Midlands. Oh, I don't know what I just did. I'm not particularly sure what I did there. Let me just zoom back in. But there's possibly the hint of another disturbance. Yeah, you can see actually quite nicely there. During the night on Wednesday, there's disturbance number 1. There's disturbance number 2. So possibly we're looking at 2 areas of storms. The biggest question about this disturbance number 2 is, yes, we may have the lift, but remember we need 2 ingredients. We need lift and moisture, and potentially, or kind of instability, potentially the instability will not be present for that round of storms. So those are all things to consider. But this is kind of my preliminary outlook, and I'll give a updated version tomorrow, because tomorrow we should have a much better idea. But 2 areas to look at: this sort of area in here, and actually even this area, and then this area down south, potential storms during the evening, so starting around 6 o'clock and then 6 a.m. on Thursday. So 6 o'clock on Wednesday to 6 a.m. on Thursday is the general window. There will not be storms that entire time, but that's the general window. And then the second day is Thursday. During the afternoon, we're likely to see convergent zones developing. That's where the wind is coming in from 2 directions together like that. And these are likely to help trigger thunderstorms through a fairly large region, as you can see here. The kind of caveat for this is how much instability there will be, though right now the levels are not looking too bad. If I show you the chart on Thursday. Technical difficulties going on here, sorry. So if I show you the chart for Thursday, you can see the sounding also has a fairly large amount of cape here. As you can see, let me get the pen out again, also has a fairly large amount of instability. So potentially some storms, and potentially intense storms on Thursday. And also notice the storm motion is very, very slow, and with a lot of moisture in the low levels. So this indicates the possibility of very heavy rain rates, and also where we get convergent zones. If I draw on a convergent zone here, so if the convergent zone is like that and the storms are moving parallel, then they will just train over the same areas over and over again and produce very large totals. So a flood risk, kind of where storms do develop on Thursday afternoon, the most likely area right now is kind of central southern England and parts of the Midlands. So that's kind of it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. I'll do a more detailed video with a full forecast tomorrow, but this is the general kind of areas we're going to see storms, timing, etc., etc. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and have a great day. Bye bye.